welcome back. Erin, thank you for coming on today and being my guest.
Thank you for having me.
I am, as always, excited for this topic du jour. Today we're talking about how to plan for renovations. It's a huge topic that, has been coming up for the last couple of years, specifically during the pandemic, even more so than before. Because, I've talked on air about how people are getting priced out of the market right now. It's a pretty robust market. And in certain times, people who can't buy a home because they get priced out, they decide, I'm just going to renovate the home that I have. And, and as you and I said off air, like, oof, that's a beast too, right? Like it's not like one is easy and one is hard. But, and people have heard about supply chain issues and the things that have really kind of publicly been said and can be a quick soundbite. But when it comes down to how do you really plan for renovation if you don't know what you're doing? And I was introduced to you by another guest and that we've had on the show. And I just, I think what your story is really, really interesting. So maybe we can start off by... It's
Can
okay.
you hear the siren?
I'll edit it out. This is the kind of thing where, your story is really amazing. And I really want you to tell everybody kind of like how you got into what you're doing. So maybe you can give a quick intro and tell everyone kind of how you got to where you are now.
Okay. So I'm Erin Helland, and I founded Hard Hat Diplomat, which is a specialty home renovation coaching business. So I'm not the GC, but I liaise a lot between homeowners who are anxious about the process and kind of don't know where to begin. And I can handhold from the beginning through the end of the project. And I also do workshops because sometimes you just need to have the confidence. I think here in DC, we have a lot of type A people who understand project management, but when it comes to their own home and their sanctuary, it makes them nervous to kind of run the show in the same way. And so a couple of years ago here in DC, I purchased a home. And 34 days after I bought it, a random Craigslist was in my house purchasing something because I was going to do some renovation. And he pulled the water shutoff valve off the second story kitchen sink. Oof. And so it blew out into the backyard. There was no shutting it off. And I had just purchased the home, and nowhere in my inspection report was there anything that said you have no water main shut off. So it was on the 4th of July. Firefighters are very busy. So about 2 hours later, the firefighters arrived. I didn't even know to call them. You think about firefighters and fire, but they also deal with water. Yeah. And they were able to shut it off from the street. But by that time, I was faced with a total gut job. And that was emotionally devastating for about a day or two. And then I just had to start taking action. So yes, it is difficult to live in your remodel or your total rehab as it's happening, but it's possible. And I activated the insurance. I called my mortgage company because I was financing some remodeling as well in my home purchase. I started reaching out, finding contractors. I lost a contractor that I had because the scope of work went from this to this.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was really riding the roller coaster of emotions, but also logistics and finances. And I started having friends reach out to me after the fact or during saying, how did you go about finding your contractor? How did you know they were quality? How did you even know what it was you were supposed to fix? Sure. And then how did you design what it is that you were doing? And so in conversation with Lee Para, your past guest, because I had been seriously looking at doing a tiny home, thinking that was the only thing I could afford here in DC. She and I got together because she ended up, after talking to me, buying a full-size house as well, where her tiny house is parked. And we put together a workshop just for our community, just for our network of people that we knew. And from there, we ended up having this thing spin into a national tour. And I decided that this might be a business direction to go in. So since then, I went to home inspector school. I'm a nationally certified home inspector. I don't do it because the ethics of it are, if I inspect and I find something, I can't really help you find the solution. So I just utilize that education to help me better inform people through the process of what it is that they need to renovate.
I mean, that's it. And I wanted you to tell that story because it's very compelling, one. And two, it does give more clarity to why, like how you have this authority when you're talking either on the show or in your workshops or doing the national tour you've done. Living and experiencing and working through something is something completely different than the other wonderful things that have happened in your life, like you getting the certifications and you doing some of this, this work with your own hands and hiring people. So I think it speaks to one, just how the triumph of the human spirit that you got through that, and that you've made some lemonade out of lemons, right, with that situation. But yeah, I mean, I think it goes to say that I help a lot of clients. I help them with renovations, but the big difference between what we're going to talk about for the rest of the show and what happens when, let's say you're my client, I helped you buy a house, you want to renovate your kitchen. I'm almost definitely going to hand you 1 to 3 people, contractors, GCs, who can do the work, who are going to do a great job, and who are frankly beholden to me and the fact that I hand them business, or the opportunity to get business, right? I'm never totally handing somebody off, but giving them that opportunity. And so these contractors are going to do a good job because I am a lead source for them. And so my clients are in a great position where they don't have to really vet the person too much. They still might, if they want to, but like I've effectively done that for them. So what if you're somebody who you don't have a me in the situation? You don't have somebody who can hand over a referral for you. How do you go about doing this? And so anyway, so let's just kind of get into it. And I'll just kind of say right off the bat that, anybody who's listening, we're kind of broadly covering everything today. But if you are more interested in things, Erin has the workshops that you guys can take, and you can really delve in a little bit more because there's only so much we can cover in 20, 25 minutes today.
Right.
So, okay, Erin, so maybe I'll let you kind of get things started. So you decide that you had a tremendous massive thing happen in your house like you did with the water damage, knock on wood, I hope that happens to nobody who's listening, or you just decide you want to do some kind of renovation project. And let's say you have really no idea what you're doing. You're like a Pinterest looker. You like, I like that kitchen. I like that bathroom. That tile looks cool. Yep. But you have no gauge for what any of this costs, takes, whatever.
Yeah.
How do you help people start?
Well, I would like to say the first mistake that probably 80% of people make is they pass the project scope and design onto an unknown contractor before they've even thought about what it is that they really want. They have some nebulous idea of what they would like to do, but that picture is not necessarily solid and clear as a scope of work for a contractor to complete. So the first person that walks in the door starts giving you these ideas and you get really excited and you're on board with them, but you've immediately passed off all the design elements, all the essential elements, and the budget to this contractor without even really thinking through the process. And even if it's someone who comes in like you have referred them, that is the pro and con of DIY or searching for yourself versus having a referral. But I say to every client, even if I give you the name of a contractor, the knowledge that they have on a particular type of project, your communication skills or preferences together may clash. So you really need to vet them before it is beginning so that you have clear guidelines as to how to start. So kind of reversing back into what you asked, there's 2 parts to starting from unknown cart and horse challenge. And the first one is to really plan and prepare for your renovation. You need to understand what is your scope of work. So you have to really sit there and define all the things that you want. And maybe there's things that you need that you don't know about yet. And that can come up once the contractor is there. You can start with essentials. Like sometimes you have, when you purchase a home, your home inspection list. So you've already got like, what are critical things that need to be done? They may have suggestions for you. You could bring in various trades and have electricians look, or HVAC mechanic, check something out. Or you can start getting these general contractors in, which is harder and harder to do in the pandemic as demand for them comes up. That is not just some line that's out there. And I would caution anyone who decides to hire the first and only contractor who comes to the door and says, yes, I can start your project right away and do it within budget.
I'm going to interrupt 2 seconds just to say that one of my contractors, one of my GCs says, do you want if you know that the industry is very busy right now, do you really want to hire the person who has availability tomorrow? And, it sounds kind of crass, but it's true. Somebody who's going to do a good job and has good references and whatnot, like they have a book of business probably, and they're working through it. I mean, the question is, do you want to wait 8 months? Do you want to wait 12 months? Okay, maybe that's more understandable, but somebody who has time tomorrow.
And to be fair, I always like to weigh both sides, both for the homeowner and the contractor. So I'm the daughter of a Class A contractor who worked for 40 years in the industry, and I have seen both sides. And sometimes, like right now in the pandemic, the material supply is so delayed that I can talk to contractors that I trust who do top-notch quality. And I'll say, how many projects are you working on right now? And they'll say anywhere from 0 to 6. And it's just because they have to wait. We're looking at 16, 20, 26 weeks for windows to come in. And there's a whole ripple effect of what can be completed when you can't put the windows in, you can't put the siding in.
Right.
So
that's just, okay. I mean, call me out
on both sides.
Yeah, call me out on all of this. No, it's okay.
These are considerations for both ways, because I completely agree. If someone just says, I can do this tomorrow and I can do it under your budget and I can do it for great quality, you might you might question that. So that leads us to the next thing. So you should also have a foundation for what your budget is. When you have someone come in and you just say, I don't know, I have no idea how much that costs, again, you have removed yourself from the driver's seat. So there are a number of websites where you can start doing research. How much should this cost on average? Create your spreadsheet and just start calculating out an approximation. Maybe call your bank if you're going to bank finance and find out what is the maximum loan you can get. So you need to come in way under that, because you need contingency funds, because no contractor has x-ray vision. They cannot see through your walls and tell you, oops, we're going to find mold, or we're going to find cloth wrapped electrical wire and you're going to have to redo a segment of your house. The other thing is design. It's important that you have some sort of vision that you can articulate. I like to tell people to put blue tape on the floor. You can get grid paper, graph paper, and kind of sketch something out. Don't feel embarrassed about what that is. And then, of course, you've got to do your research. You can say, I want to do all new lighting in the house, for example. But if you haven't looked up even on Wayfair or compared the basic kits at Home Depot, they might be quoting you something that's only going to cost $25, when in your mind, what you're visualizing is something that actually would cost $600 or $700 to install.
Yep. I mean, this is all stuff that I don't think I've said quite this succinctly in a 2-minute or 3-minute, time period, but no, it's true. I mean, the not knowing what's behind the walls applies to a contractor. That's almost exactly verbatim what I say during a home inspection to people, which is, people live and die by home inspections, which I get it. You want to get your home inspected, but it's only what you can see on the outside. And, within 1 to 2 hours, there's not somebody spending 2 days at your house poking at the mortar or, checking every single piece of wood to see if there's wood rot in it. I mean, like, there are things that just can't be seen.
Homeowners should go into a home purchase expecting almost immediately that something's going to go wrong. I don't know anyone who's avoided that Murphy's Law in purchasing a home. I think the statistics are something like 70% of all homes in the U.S. require some sort of significant modification or repair.
Wow. That's good to know. I'm not passing that one on to my clients who are freaking out about cost. No, but I mean, it's true. And that's another reason why when people are exploring their budgets in general for anything involving a house, to not completely tap out all of your resources, because, when you're getting a loan, hopefully your lender will be keeping that, keeping tabs on that and saying, okay, you cannot gut every single piece of savings you have for this home, because then the chances of you defaulting are much higher, obviously, should something go wrong. But I mean, it is something to consider, especially in DC, where the majority of the homes that are purchased are not new. If we talk about new construction, new construction, things are warranted. You have builders typically are on the hook for a certain period of time, 1 to 2 years. Whether or not they totally fix something is a totally different topic. But like still, and for that, you're paying top of market, right? You're paying absolutely top. So you're not getting deals really with new construction. And again, the number, I should probably know the stat, but I just know I just did a search for a client who only wants new construction. And the number of listings, where they want in their budget is minimal compared to everything else in an already short supply market. So
yes.
Anyway, okay. So I think all of that is really great. So doing your research is kind of where we ended off with that. And so then we need to actually find and, vet a contractor. So you did in a little way, it's not that you called me out, but you did make an important point about the vetting. No, about the vetting. I said, if I hand you somebody, that person has been vetted.
Yeah.
That person has been vetted to my standards, right?
Correct.
That person can handle my communication style. That person is going to, basically give me what I need when I'm helping manage a project. Yeah. So is that what my client needs? Maybe, maybe not. Does, hopefully at that point, I know my client well enough that I can say, this is probably the better match for you. But, I could be wrong. So if that's the case, let's talk about vetting, contractors and stuff in general, so that people kind of know how to go about that.
So kind of reiterating before, the first thing you have to do is know what it is that you want. If you're calling them and leaving a voicemail, and I highly recommend leaving voicemails and calling contractors, because most of the time they're in the field, especially when there's a labor shortage right now. So they're in the crawl spaces, they're in the attics, they're helping do demolition, or they're running to the hardware store for their crews to get that piece to keep the project moving forward as quickly as possible. They're not sitting behind a desk checking their emails. Admin is the thing that they will attempt to carve out time for as frequently as possible. So leave a voicemail and explain in that voicemail very succinctly what it is you're aiming to do. Hi, I am so-and-so. These are the kinds of projects I'm looking to do. And in my workshop, I'll give a few more tips on exactly what I would do to increase the callback rate. I think you have to source, as we talked about, several professionals. And some of the questions to ask, which when you've pre-vetted them, there's less to worry about. But, are they even licensed to do work in your city or your municipality?
Yep.
That is, I can't tell you how many times, because some of my renovations when the disaster happened here were insurance covered and were also part of my mortgage rehab funds, I needed to have someone who was licensed and who was insured and who could prove to me that in paperwork. That is a very simple email from a contractor, or even a picture they can take. It's not difficult for them to provide. And I had no less than 6 contractors tell me they were licensed to do work here. And then when it came down to contract time, they said, oh, I let my license expired and I've decided not to renew it. Or I'm licensed in another state, I'm just not licensed here. Can we just do this on a cash basis? And I would tell them, after speaking with you and being prepared to move forward, I have no doubt that you are competent, that you are qualified to do this work. Sure. But there is no way that I can hire you to do this work based on those requirements. But those are also safety requirements in terms of if something goes wrong, to not have it fall back on you, the homeowner.
Yeah, I mean, that's not something that actually I talk about a lot, and that's true. And when we come to DC, Maryland, and Virginia, which are the 3 jurisdictions that I'm licensed in, it's just I can't sell real estate in Virginia if I'm not licensed there. I might have a great understanding of Arlington because I'm licensed in DC, and I know people who are crossing the bridge and we talk about it. But at the end of the day, you need to be licensed in the areas in which you work. And it's important for everybody, but in the case of the homeowner, this is your house. This is a roof over your head. This is something you should be protecting at all costs. And so it's a very simple thing to make sure that that person has license in the jurisdiction in which they're working, where your home is.
So you've kind of described your project, and you've been looking for a contractor and making phone calls, and that can come from word of mouth or referrals, or you tap into associations. And now you're starting to vet them, not only legally, but, do they fit your project. Are they specialized in what it is that you want, or are they mostly like, I do brick face, tuck pointing and mortar work and painting, but I'm not really an interior GC? Or if you're doing a deck, is that something that they specialize in? Because the more someone specializes in something or has experience and crews who know what they're doing in that kind of framing, for example, the faster it's going to go and the less it's going to cost in the long run. And then it's actually quality and to code. So you really got to vet them. And then I also think you want to assess their response. So I get some people that are saying, well, I haven't heard back from them yet, so I'm just going to let it go. And as I mentioned before, they're often out in the field. So do your part to try to follow up. And it also shows your sincerity. But then when they do respond, are you getting like a pink slip where they've written you an estimate when they come to your house and they hand you that little receipt on carbon copy paper, and then they say, like, yeah, you want to go, and then they try to convert that into the contract. Like that becomes the contract. Don't do that. So you really want to like assess how they're responding to you, and then you start reaching the point where you negotiate and move to the final contract. And in the workshop, we start talking about like what are some of the criteria that should be in your contract, because you can have them give you their standard contract or you can issue a contract. Either way works. If they're writing it up, though, you want to make sure it's very explicit, spelling out what is going to happen in your project, because you're only protected by those four corners of what's in writing. And then you can always add in these components that we suggest having, because we hope for you that everything goes exactly to plan, and what you envisioned in your mind is exactly what you're going to get as your project. And these kinds of workshops help to guide you towards that end.
Sure. I mean, in terms of the contract and whatnot, I think it's important to outline contingencies of things that very well may happen. For example, we talked about if product is not coming in, right? Like I've got a GC I'm friends with. They ordered almost everything for the house at once, and it had approximately the same delivery date. But the flooring came in 3 months before the appliances, or maybe it was the opposite. The appliances came, whatever, it doesn't matter. Something came in way early. And so they were like, well, where are we going to keep this stuff? Do they have a warehouse? Of course they have a warehouse, but does their warehouse have room to hold half of everybody's projects? Maybe not. Yeah. So are they getting more space? Are they charging the client for that? Does the client have to pay? It kind of is crappy all the way around, right? Like you don't want, as the homeowner, to keep the appliances that can't be hooked up sitting in your living room for 3 months. But in the same vein, your contractor might not have that room either. So do you pay more money up front for that, possibility happening and then you not having to deal with it as a homeowner? Is that a contingency written in your contract? Like these are all things I think you'd have to iron out, right?
I think pre-pandemic, there was a lot more contingency language like that could be included, such as for every 5 days that you go over deadline, this much will be reduced in the overall cost. At this point, though, there has to be a bend on either side. So we know that the budgets are, everyone has to set their budget, and you want to have some contingency funds. But it's been swinging pretty wildly right now. And that's sometimes the price gouging that's happening right now, where everyone's jumping on board. Well, if these prices are going up, I'm going to raise the prices on this product as well. Some of it is truly the supply shortages or the quality. Sometimes you can have two products available, but the quality of one is far superior to the other. And so I think that both parties have to be bending a little on this. And sometimes you're in that situation. I'm working on a renovation of some cabins right now where, we had to order as much as we possibly could in advance and figure out where on site it would be stored, and take the risk that we were going to, by the time it was installed, to see if appliances, for example, were working, would be past the return and warranty date. And that happened with, I would say, 60 or 70% of the products that we had. And those just had to be opportunity costs, right? It was better to have something available and on site than to not have it at all.
Yeah, it's not easy. And that's when we talk about, the difference, like let's come full circle with this episode, people who are feeling priced out not wanting to pay 60, 80, $100,000 over asking price because they think that's outrageous, which I agree, seems outrageous too, that they might just renovate their own homes, but that doesn't come without, concerns, issues, things, to consider as well. I do have one question just to see how you feel about this. How do you feel about hiring one general contractor who subs out versus you hiring people individually who do different parts of the project that are needed? I kind of waffle on this, to be honest, so I'm just curious how you feel about it.
This is something we talk about in the workshop very distinctively, because it is that, are you DIY GC or are you hiring a GC? And I think there's so many factors that you have to consider, like what is your time worth and stress level? It's a lot easier to put all the ordering and all the management of that on someone else. So like if you're doing a full-time job and you're a parent or you're caring for an elder parent, that might put you on that tipping point to, I know I'm capable of doing it, but it doesn't make the most sense for me in my life. And the savings may or may not be huge, because back to what you said, the subs may have a relationship with that GC. So they're going to show up sooner. They're going to price it appropriately because they want to keep getting jobs with that GC. So I have done it for myself personally, where I have major project components where I will go with a GC who brings in their subs. And then there are smaller things where I'll say, I'm going to do that one either on a separate contract. We can continue working if things go well, or I'm going to hire a weekend electrician to come do the walkthrough of the little things, just changing a few outlets, adding in the Nest doorbell, whatever it is, separate from adding it into the greater project cost.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think that's true. I mean, I think to evaluate one's personal situation is truly the heart of deciding the answer to that question, and it might, we talked about what you have on your plate with a job and maybe caring for somebody, or maybe you just don't want to do it. Maybe you just don't want to be the one in charge of a bunch of different people because you're managing different personalities or whatever.
Warranties and liabilities come into consideration as well. The more individual subs that you have hired and brought into a project, the more finger pointing can happen when something does go wrong. And it's a lot easier to have the GC be responsible to correct whatever has gone wrong than it is for you to have to find someone new to reverse engineer that work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Erin, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, this has been a really awesome episode. I hope that it's super helpful to people who are listening. I mean, always, this is kind of an evergreen podcast content, but I think that it'll also help a lot of people currently right now in this market who are trying to figure out which direction to go in. And of course, I do encourage anybody who wants to learn more. I'm going to link Erin's information in the show notes and on the website so that you guys can go check her out and maybe learn some more, feel more confident about the process, which of course is very important. And Erin, I will talk to you soon. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.